Hey guys and girls, David H. here from socialexpression.net. The video today, it's going to go up on my blog. It's tax week for me, so don't have time to write a separate post and do a separate video, so I'm going to put it into one here. And lately I've been getting a lot of comments, good questions from people about challenging their thoughts when things get difficult, especially when they're out in public, in social situations. And CBT does help with this in what's called thought intervention or thought challenging, and I've used it to great effect for myself. But there's a caveat: is there are newer approaches that I have used and continue to use for not only if social anxiety happens to come up, but if other things in my life, depression or anxiety in general. Even though social anxiety is a very, very small part, if anything, if it comes up, I can handle it very easily now. And CBT helped it, but I did have a point where things kind of lashed back even after I did a great deal of therapy. Now, why is this? And people have been asking, well, if I'm thought challenging, I'm having a problem, or if I try to use the power of positive thinking, I'm having a problem. I feel fake. And there's a certain degree of truth to the fact that you've been faking it already, that you've just been thinking the wrong thoughts. So the CBT approach is to get there and counteract the thought and kind of see if you can shift the thought, okay? Now, that requires more work than what I'm going to suggest. However, what I'm going to suggest is not necessarily easier at first, but it will be easier in the long run is my true belief. And what is that? And it's the whole concept of, instead of trying to challenge the thought and, or distract and ignore it, you actually want to let the thought be there without fighting it and without following it. Don't fight or follow, I call it. And you hang out and kind of let the thought be, or just observe the thought. And there are different ways to do this. It's not, when I say just observe the thought, you'd be, oh yeah, well, that sounds great, but how the hell do I do that? Well, there are lots of ways to do it. One is to, it's a bit of a mental intervention in your head, but it works pretty well for me sometimes, and it's to go, so if I have a thought, everyone's judging me when I'm out. Everyone's looking at me, and it's making me uncomfortable, and the thought is everyone's looking at me, and the idea is to start observing it, and you can say to yourself, I think I said this in another video before, you say, I'm having the thought that everyone's looking at me. I'm having the thought that everyone's looking at me. And then you take it one step further, and what you're kind of do is trying to distance yourself from the thought, but not make it go away and observe it, and then you say, I notice I'm having the thought that people are looking at me. I notice that I'm having the thought that people are looking at me. Okay? The other way that I like to do, it doesn't work for everyone, is I like to thank my mind for either trying to put me down or praise me. So let me step back for a second and say, what we typically think is we think negative thoughts are bad and positive thoughts are good. So if we're thinking positive thoughts, those are good, and we're thinking negative thoughts, they're bad. So no wonder why we bounce around so much emotionally, and we try to, and not only that, what's the real killer? The killer isn't the negative thoughts. And you can agree or disagree with me, I'd like to hear, but the killer is when you have the positive thoughts, and then you try to hold on to those, and you're holding on for dear life, and then you snap back in the negative, and it's almost like, because you made some progress in the positive side and you bounce back to the negative, that you feel all is lost, that you did all this work, and it's almost like you've gone twice the distance and now you're back again and you feel worse, right? So what I'm suggesting, it's not the content of the thought, what the thought is, it's your relationship to the thought. It's how you relate to the thought, whether you fight or follow the thought instead of letting the thought hang out. And what tends to happen is the thought tends to dissipate on its own. Now, I don't want to say it will make it dissipate, because once you start to try to make it go away, make it dissipate, you're actually fighting it. Okay, you're fighting it. You're not actually observing it. It's a very, very tricky point. It's very, very difficult for those of us who have grown up in society that thinking positive is good, negative is bad. Hide the negative, show your pretty face, show your smiling face, show that you feel good all the time. The kind of thing, grin and bear it that we do often in our culture. And that's how we've coped. But I'm talking about living here and really living and living a more full life and not letting your social anxiety thoughts and feelings run you and govern you, whether they come and go or not. And remember that having some social anxiety is normal. So what's the difference between somebody with social anxiety disorder and somebody that has social anxiety normally that doesn't consider themselves really having social anxiety at all? And I would say that since they have a lot of the same thoughts, they just don't relate to the thoughts and feelings the same way that we do. Because we hold on to them or try to push them, it maintains that story, that disorder story, right? And I'm not saying story to demean it. I'm saying the story is a collection of thoughts and feelings that make the world show up in a certain way, that filters in a story of our world, okay? So that's why mindfulness, awareness, meditation is great. It is great to practice. Now, of course, just doing meditation, I think is not the full approach. Doing mindfulness stuff, like I just said, with the exercise, noticing and having the thought, thanking your mind, and there are a bunch of other techniques as well. I don't have time to go into them all, but it's all about going through the experiential process. Yeah, we can take our beliefs and try to rationalize them out and stuff, and that's fine. I actually like rationalization. I think it helps us get a grip. But when we get into a really emotional state, well, you have to realize that the rationalization happens in the cortex of the brain. But when you're really under distress, you go to the amygdala, which is deeper in the brain, your emotional center. And in the amygdala, you can't really out-rationalize the amygdala with the way human biology works. So constantly practicing these skills of mindfulness and watching the thoughts come and go, whether positive or negative, is very important. Because if you try to hold on to any thought, it doesn't matter. You're going to start grabbing any thought that comes. So the idea is not to grab the thoughts, but let them pass through. Okay? Eastern tradition has taught this for thousands of years, and now it's becoming big in the West. And thank God, because I think it makes all the difference to living a more full life, and to actually also being very effective in not letting anxiety control you, depression control you, whatever it is that's related to your social anxiety as well. So that's my two cents. As always, check out socialexpression.net if you didn't find this via socialexpression.net already. I'm working hard on my Dissolve Your Social Anxiety home recovery course, home recovery system. It's going to be based on all the mindfulness stuff, some CBT stuff, but a lot of it's going to be mindfulness-based stuff, mindfulness-based therapies like acceptance and commitment therapy, and mindfulness practice in general, and also taking action, what you can do to take action. It's not just all about mindfulness, it's also about taking action, doing what matters to you in your life. So really, I'm really excited about it. I'm working hard on it, and it's taking me a little longer than I thought, but I hope to have it out sometime in March here. And you can also get my free ebook on the site if you haven't got it yet, on 10 Keys to Social Anxiety Recovery. And I think I'm done being a talking head, so as always, leave comments, questions, feedback below the video, and talk to you guys next time. Bye.